Alright kids, comedian and writer Baratunde Thurston once described the black experience as hip-hop, crime, prison, fatherless homes, musical talent, drugs, athleticism, affirmative action, poverty, and the civil rights movement. And while that's not a complete list, nor is it supposed to be, whether one agrees with something like this shouldn't determine their blackness. And because I personally relate to most of the things he included, it doesn't make me blacker than any other black person or any other black person less black than me. Keep this in mind when we talk about black authenticity, something I felt the need to discuss way back in my 6th episode. Since that one focused on the perception of not being black enough, taking examples of Donald Glover and Russell Wilson and Whitney Houston and so on, I want to revisit this to include being biracial. As of today, we're halfway through Hispanic Heritage Month, and while you should celebrate this time, being Hispanic, and have pride in these things, I always hoped that your ethnicity, along with you being Native American, wouldn't have others calling your blackness into question. Because as you'll see today, being black whatsoever has meant being too black in this country. For example, let's look at racial categories, which have been included in every US census since the first one in 1790, and have changed from decade to decade, reflecting the politics and science of the times. It wasn't until 1960 that people could select their own race. Prior to that, an individual's race was determined by census takers called enumerators, meaning we were told that we were black. We had no choice. And it wasn't until the year 2000 that Americans could choose more than one race to describe themselves. There are more biracial and multiracial people in today's America than ever before. And even though there's now an ability to choose more than one race on the census, I wonder how many people in general would rather just identify as biracial or multiracial. It's not a choice in the US Census, by the way, but in order to avoid disrespecting one or many parts of their lineage and heritage. Because in real life, it feels like you have to choose being just one race. And often, you can only choose one. More on this later. As we proceed, I need to say that there can be no such thing as transracial because there's no such thing as race. It's made up. But we'll take what we're given. Anyways, let's take a look at where all these mixed people came from. Mixed couples. So there's this idea that since there are more interracial marriages nowadays, America is doing better in terms of race relations, but like, nuh-uh. I mean, how many people out there don't like their in-laws, let alone their spouses? And I'm supposed to be convinced that, say, since a white man likes a black woman, it means he likes all black people? No. And I put that on Thomas Jefferson. All this graph shows me is that white people have a tendency to be in romantic relationships with white passing or lighter skinned people. Going back to having to choose, it's interesting that white and East Asian people can choose to identify with their whiteness, because black people usually can't do that. I can't stress this enough, but that's by design. This leads us to the one-drop rule, dating back to 1662. No other country has anything like it. And in the US, it includes a court ruling from 1983, which said that Susie Phipps, 49 at the time, described as a fair-skinned woman with almond eyes, was colored, as her birth certificate said, instead of white, primarily because her great-great-great-great-grandmother was black. That was an enslaved person from the late 1700s, 222 years before the ruling, making Susie 3/32 black. So when watching this skit that I've also used in order to display code switching, very important skill for assimilating the whiteness, by the way, Key and Peele, biracial people, impersonating Obama, a biracial person, listen to what he says here.
1/8 black.
Afternoon, my octoroon. Come on, bring it in there. Tuck that.
Octoroon. That was the name given to those who were 1/8 black. This country had a sliding scale, varying degree, fractions of blackness in order to judge the impurity of black people, including mulatto, which meant half black, quadroon meant quarter black, again, octoroon meant 1/8 black, and hexadecaroon meant 1/16 black. See, once upon a time, Negro, black, and slave were synonymous terms. Even free black persons could be treated like enslaved black persons simply because they were black. There were policies like partus sequitur ventrum linking the child of a white man and a black woman to black people rather than white, rendering that child enslaved for life like its mother. And even though the 13th Amendment abolished non-prison slavery, and Brown versus the Board of Education ended legal segregation, which clearly intentionally separated white from black, and the Civil Rights Act formally ended discrimination, and Loving versus Virginia ended miscegenation laws, the damage from these policies was done and the legacy remains. upholding eugenics and trying to preserve the perceived purity of whiteness. Basically, not only did white America tell us we were black, but they told us how black. There's racism hidden in history and in the numbers. And it was already hard to find your identity when you're biracial or multiracial. Even more so when you're BIPOC mixed with white. And there was, and is, no choice. You're either white or you're not. And you will be forced to identify with the side of your minority parent. But kids, both of your parents are minorities, so how does this fit with your racial and ethnic identity? Well, in many ways, if being too black for the racial majority of this country meant merely being black, skin color, and I could have added more about behavior and culture, then, as I alluded to earlier, there's also not being black enough, especially for black people. How we can live through everything I've mentioned and still use colorism and featureism to demean one another is beyond me. Look at this list again. Donald Glover's musical talent didn't save him from questions about his black authenticity. Russell Wilson's athleticism doesn't save him from people wondering if he's black enough. I'm aware of the fact that I did not talk about the other half of your racial makeup, kids. I spoke mostly about you being black because that's how the world will see you, and they won't really care about you being indigenous like your mother, unless you're successful. But you care, you should care, and you better care about being your authentic selves. And we're gonna be all right.